one is one of my favorite categories because it really lends to a lot of things. I mean, one will fall into any story I tell at some point. I could have told the story of how I have one day before I move out of Rochester, or that I got my first smartphone 8 hours ago. But they're not really stories, so this is a real story. A while ago, a young man was born in Belize in Central America named Wendell. His grandmother called him Windy. And he lived in Belize, and when he was 7, he had to leave and come to America and live with his father for a short period of time, who left Belize because a hurricane destroyed his country, which is what happens when you live in Belize, and then he went back a year or two later when they rebuilt. And then when he was 19, he left again, this time to go to college because he was a very studious young man, and Belize is a very small country, and he was actually one of the most intellectually gifted in the country. And so he left to come to America to go to higher education. And he had 5 brothers and sisters, and they would take care of him when they had jobs, and he would take care of them. They lived in New York City and Brooklyn, and put himself through school as well as taking care of his family when they weren't taking care of him, and put himself through medical school and became an ophthalmologist. Now, in order to become a medical doctor, you have to do rotations at the hospital, so he was doing rotations at a hospital in Massachusetts, and met a young Jewish woman named Beth. And they met and they fell happily in love, and they were walking about in the streets of Massachusetts one evening, holding hands in my mind's eye. And Wendell looked over to Beth and said, "Beth, would you like to have children?" And Beth said, "Sure, but let's get married first." Because Wendell's parents were never married, despite having 3 children and then 2 from a separate sort of thing. And so they got married, and then a short time after that, they had a young, handsome, intelligent, and incredibly modest young son. And then 3.5 years after that, they had what that son would later come to define as a very affable, friendly, outgoing, confident young daughter. But Wendell was never a citizen of the United States. He never wanted to leave his citizenship from Belize. So, at the time, the United States and Belize didn't have dual citizenship. You could get American in some other country, but not American in Belize. And so, it was years and years later, and the children had grown and left, and they were at their friend's house having dinner, and one of those friends of a friend was there and was a lawyer, and said that if you die, heaven forbid, the government will take a lot more of your money because you're not an American citizen than if you get citizenship, and now there is such thing as dual citizenship. So he's like, you know what, I'll do it. So he studies and learns all he can about the nation in which he's lived for 20 plus years. And he's driving home, picking up food for his wife from North Philadelphia. They live in Philadelphia. He goes into North Philadelphia to get food, and is driving home at probably 8, 9 at night, and it's dark out, and he sees a big SUV that has a Belizean bumper sticker on it. He pulls up next to the car, and he's waving his hand. They roll down the window, and he rolls out the window, and he says, "You're from Belize?" He says, "I'm from Belize." He says, "I'm from Belize." They get out on the streets of North Philadelphia and start talking. You don't get out on the streets of North Philadelphia, but they got out on the streets of North Philadelphia. It just so happens that this woman is an immigration attorney and is going to help Wendell for free become an American citizenship because she's actually heard of this gentleman, because it's not very often that a young man comes from Belize and moves to the same city as you and becomes a doctor. So he's studying and he's studying and he's studying about the Louisiana Purchase and the duties of the presidency and things of the sort. And he's due to have a citizenship test. And his daughter, who lives at home, is ready to go the next morning, and his wife is ready to go, and his son is in Rochester, New York. And there's no telling when the citizenship test is going to happen. Sometimes it happens the same day as the swearing in, or I should say the swearing in, there's no way to tell when it happens. But oftentimes you'll take your test and not be sworn in that same day. But the night before, the daughter has some friends over, and they order a pizza, and comes to the door, and the mother, Beth, gives Wendell money to go pay for the delivery, and opens the door and finds his son standing there holding the pizza, and he is literally speechless for the first time his son has ever seen his father speechless in his life. And the next morning, they all go to the test along with the immigration attorney, and they're sitting there, and they call Wendell up, and he goes in for the test, and about 90 seconds later, he comes out. And just kind of neutral looking, and his family says, well, how'd it go? He's like, well, they asked me 7 incredibly easy questions, and they just passed me. And he's kind of disappointed. I mean, he's studied for months and months. He probably knows more than your average American about it. And so, but he doesn't get sworn in that day. And they all go out to eat, and for the first time, his children and them are all having hamburgers a block away or two, and they say, well, Wendell, tell us your life story, because as much as you've probably told us many times in the past, we really weren't listening. And he goes on to tell about how Hurricane Hattie destroyed his country when he was 7 years old, and he came to live here when he was 19, and met his wife and things of the sort. And 2 months later, he was sworn in as an American citizen after 28 years in this country. Yeah.